The city of Jerash in modern-day Jordan has a complex history. It was originally established as the town of Garshu by Arabic and Semitic tribes in the first millennium BCE. After falling into Roman hands under a military campaign by the consul Pompey in 63 BCE, the city was renamed Gerasa and was integrated into the Roman province of Syria. Trade flourished along the east coast of the Mediterranean under the expanding Roman Empire and, as a result, Gerasa experienced immense prosperity during the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. The city became part of the powerful Syrian Decapolis, a league of major economic and political powers in the region, and was visited by many Roman emperors, among them Trajan and Hadrian, who had monuments constructed in their honor. Yet, as the prosperity of the shipping trade grew, the city declined in population. Today, its well-preserved archaeological remains present the bones of an early Arab town repurposed by principles of Roman city planning. In this presentation, we will explore how the city's layout, built environment, and physical remains reflect this rich history. Early archaeological remains indicate that the original settlement of Garshu grew organically on both sides of what was then the Wadi Jerash, and is now merely a desert wadi. As the Romans repurposed the city and brought trade to the region, an orthogonal city layout arose with a main north-south axis, connecting the north and south gates. This thoroughfare, called the Cardo, was intersected by two major east-west decumani. The vast majority of important public buildings were located along these axes, providing much-needed accessibility to citizens. Further, the importance of Gerasa and the local economic network indicates that these thoroughfares were necessary to provide transportation and communication throughout the city. An increase in population during this time period demanded expansion of the city northwards, with recent excavations uncovering Roman quarries and cisterns in what became the northwest corner of the ancient city. Meanwhile, ancient temples dedicated to local cults were built over by Roman designs.
Most traffic approached the city from the south gate, so several impressive structures were built there, including the city's hippodrome and a triumphal arch in honor of Emperor Hadrian. This arch was intended to eventually form the southern gate of the city, but the plans to expand the walls were never carried out. Up the road, the Forum was located just inside the city's south gate. As a major point of focus in the city, it gave the public easy access to the Temple of Jupiter, as well as two stone altars in the center of the plaza. Standing in the center of the Forum, a viewer's eye would be drawn to the temple as it was elevated above other buildings. The impressive vertical columns and frontality of the building were important visual cues to the importance of the temple in Gerasa's urban armature. Interestingly, the Forum was not located at a juncture of two axes, as is the standard, but was rather placed immediately inside the gate, perhaps to allow farmers and merchants easier access to the markets without need to cart goods all the way through the city. Additionally, the Forum was not rectangular, but ovular, in a stark departure from Roman tradition. West of the Temple of Jupiter was a large theater, shown here. It was capable of seating some 3,000 spectators. From the Forum, the main road through Jerash, called the Cardo, led northwest through the city. To highlight the importance of this thoroughfare, the street was lined with Corinthian columns that drew the eye deeper into the city. At the place where the Cardo meets the first of the two short axes, the intersection was marked by a tetrapylon to indicate the importance of the juncture. The southern cross street, called the Southern Decumanus, leads to a 73-meter-long bridge over the Wadi Jerash, providing access to what was once a residential district, but today is covered by the modern city. At the intersection of the North Decumanus with the Cardo was another tetrapylon. Clustered around this intersection were the North Theater and the West Baths, a massive complex measuring 50 by 70 meters, almost 40,000 square feet. About halfway between the South Decumanus and the North Decumanus was the entrance to the Temple Esplanade, which contained the Temple of Artemis. This complex was at the top of a massive staircase and surrounded by high walls to draw the eye upwards. Like the Temple of Jupiter, these features accentuated the importance of the compound in the life of the city. It also held the city's nymphaeum, which was fed by the Birketten aqueduct. Outside the city's northern wall was a double pool called the Birkettine that functioned as a reservoir for the western side of the city. This pool was fed by an aqueduct carrying water from several springs sourced over a kilometer north of the city. The reservoir was too low to provide water to the high temple complexes, but the Berkatine's pools did flow to the Nymphaeum, the West Baths, and several fountains in the city. This indicates that these structures were important sources of water for the people. It is therefore understandable that the Nymphaeum was placed at the central cross street near the Temple of Artemis so that it was easily accessible. Water was also supplied by the Ain Karawan spring that flowed from within the city walls. There is some debate about whether these sources could supply enough water for the entire city, but there is no current archaeological evidence that indicates other aqueducts were in use, though there are several springs to the west of the city that would have made good candidates for water supply.
The Hadrianic Arch sits at the eastern edge of the town, beyond the city walls and next to the Hippodrome. The height of the structure, dramatized by the contrast between the two side arches and the even larger central arch, gives vertical emphasis to an otherwise dramatically horizontal plane that can be seen through it and around it. While it is clearly an impressive piece of art in itself, this grand arch served to emphasize important aspects of the city beyond it and point out the most important honorific building of the city, the Temple of Artemis. The Temple of Artemis in the center of town is framed by the central arch, where there were once large wooden doors open to people passing through. Adjacent to the Hadrianic Arch is the Hippodrome. The Hippodrome was built at the end of the 2nd century AD, used for horse racing. Its walls were approximately 240 by 51 to 49 meters from the inside, and 260 by 76 from the outside. The height was about 10 meters above ground level, but some variance existed in these dimensions, as the Romans adjusted the structure according to the topography, which was uneven, as the Hippodrome was built on the edge of a valley. To the left you can see the Hadrianic Arch. The chambers, seen on the eastern boundary of the Hippodrome, were used for shops along the street that linked the Hadrianic Arch with the south gate. The walls of the Hippodrome served not just to demarcate a boundary for the activities within the Hippodrome, but also as a row of commercial activity that led people from the south gate to the Temple of Artemis, creating the major axis of activity in Jerash.
The Temple of Artemis was hexagonal in style, reminiscent of the Etruscan-style temples. It contained 12 columns, 11 of which are still standing today. The architecture of the columns were influenced by the style of the Corinthians. As shown, the columns were very symmetrical and contained acanthus leaves, just like the Arch of Hadrian. These columns work alongside the frontality and size of the stairway to draw the viewer's eye upwards towards the entrance to the temple itself. The temple was constructed on the highest point of the city. The elevating of the structure in this way both honored Artemis and ensured that her presence could watch over and protect the lands, streets, and rivers. Artemis, goddess of the hills and forest, was a key figure that the Romans worshipped. It makes sense then that this building was both visually imposing and was located in the central area of the city.
Although we have already discussed Jerash's water supply, the Roman architectural features relating to the water infrastructure are also worth studying. Besides public fountains located throughout the city, the Nymphaeum, marked here, and the West Baths, marked here, supply water for drinking and bathing respectively. The two buildings were both constructed in the 2nd century CE, likely as a result of Jerash's growing population and subsequent increase in demand for water. Although earthquakes have decimated the West Baths, remains suggest that the structure reflected a typical Roman bathhouse formed from a number of smaller rooms for changing, exercise, and hot and cold baths. The Nymphaeum, meanwhile, was an imposing structure with a number of decorative features, including columns and statues, now lost. These features, along with the location of this structure along the central Cardo, indicate that the Nymphaeum was of great importance to the public and was likely a major source of water.
The Cardo was a 600-meter street that ran through the length of the city and was paved with flagstones. There were 500 impressive columns standing along the road, and they were specifically built at different heights so that they could complement the buildings that stood behind them. Clearly, there was a great agreement within Jerash's urban armature as to the relationship between major thoroughfares, monuments, and public buildings. On either side was a broad sidewalk with shops, which can still be clearly seen. The Cardo also served an ulterior purpose. An underground sewage system ran the full length of the Cardo, and the regular holes at the sides of the street drained rainwater into the sewers. Now, if one were to walk south down the Cardo, they would be met by the Oval Plaza, introduced earlier. The plaza measured 90 meters by 80 meters and was surrounded by a sidewalk, as well as 160 Ionic columns. As shown in the picture, the columns surrounded the complex in an oval formation. As noted before, the proximity of the plaza to the South Gate, an important monument directing trade and transportation through the city, indicates that the plaza served important economic functions too. In addition to the shops along the cardio, it is likely that market stalls lined the space. 2 altars and a fountain were located directly in the center of this open space, indicating the use of the plaza for both important religious functions and everyday chores, such as collecting water.
A side road connected the plaza to the city's South Theater, located behind the Temple of Zeus and near the city wall, as shown on the map. The theater was built during the Roman period and was capable of holding 3,000 people. It is still in use today as an event venue due to its reliable construction and acoustics. Archaeological studies have found evidence of Greek letters upon rows of seats, indicating the reservation of specific seating sections for individuals of importance. In the classic Greek design, the theater is built into the hillside. This structure was likely used as a location for assembly meetings and public speeches. Indeed, lack of archaeological evidence for a basilica in Jerash indicates that the theater was a center of political life. Thus, the nearby plaza acted as an important focal point in Jerash, as it was the center of religious, economic, and political functions of daily life. It should be noted that a north theater of a similar style has been uncovered at the northern end of the city, seen on the map. Although it was newer, smaller in size, and could hold only 1,600 occupants, archaeological evidence, such as inscriptions indicating the meeting of local groups, suggest that it was also an important center of political life. The location of this structure at the more modern northern end of the city suggests that it was built to facilitate the expanding population of Jerash. Recent excavations in the northwest corner of the city have uncovered newer residential neighborhoods built towards the end of the Roman period.
South Gate is a prime example of the utility of the Roman arch. Built into the facade are Corinthian columns on high pedestals displaying intricate leaf patterns, much like other columns found throughout the city. The 3 arches within the gate would have once supported 3 wooden doors. This structure is one of the 4 original entrances to the city. People who enter through South Gate can begin to view the columns of the Cardo through the central framing arch of the gate as they approach the staircase from the outside. The Romans were very proud of their columns and wanted to make a statement by showing off their architecture once someone walked into the city.
Jerash had 2 touch-up pylons, one each in the north and south sides of the city. The south touch-up pylon consisted of 4 sets of Corinthian pillars, topped by detailed ornaments and elevated by pedestals. Each set of pillars stood on a 4-meter square podium, and each podium was 6 meters from the next. The path created by the intersection of these pillars links the circular plaza with the Decumanus and other streets, at the same time constructing a more intimate space of activity in between them. As seen in these examples of the built environment of Jerash, it was common practice to impose dramatically vertical structures on the otherwise horizontal, though uneven plane. The view or purpose emphasized can be understood by the degree to which a person's sight is confined within or directed beyond a structure. Towering pillars and imposing arches narrow our view to the spaces or structures of importance in an otherwise vast and open landscape. Walls can serve multiple purposes as well, to enclose a space for certain activities from the inside, or lead people down a line towards a focal point from the outside. By observing these details, we can begin to understand the activities and ideas valued by this culture.